Today we'll hear from David Adams, who, as co-director of Emerge, has provided abuser education groups and trainings in Cambridge for over 30 years. Emerge serves the local Cambridge and Greater Boston communities, as well as providing training nationally and internationally. Adams has been widely published and is regarded as one of the foremost experts on abuse and intimate partner relationships. The first abuser education program in the U.S., Emerge also provides parenting classes for fathers, which is a great resource for local Cambridge residents. The classes are free of charge and are sponsored by various Massachusetts agencies. Today, David brings us lessons on respect and empathy.
We actually have a lesson. One of my favorite lessons is about how do you teach respect to your children? How do you teach empathy to your children? And they all agree that those are important things to teach their children. And we'll ask them, well, I mean, what are examples of respect? Like you respect, you respect. You say thank you to people when they give you things. You say please. And those are kind of respectful behaviors, being nice to strangers. But then we're thinking, well, all right, well, what about towards the other parent? What does respect look like, towards the other parent? What are the signs of respect? Because kids are always observing, every little interaction between their parents, nonverbal communication, even more than verbal communication. And really the signs of disrespect are communicated nonverbally, even more than they're communicated verbally, so you have somebody who's like rolling his eyes or ignoring his partner, or just making an ugly face when she's talking. That's very powerful. Kids are observing that, they're like human sponges, basically. They're just observing everything, and then most parents know that kids are prone to copying their behavior, and so as a result they don't use swear words in front of their kids because kids will pick up on those and use those words. Well, guess what? They're copying attitudes too, and so if you have a father who's routinely not listening to his partner, then kids are more prone to copying that behavior. So that what we do in that exercise is that we kind of present, I think it's 5 signs of respect, and one of the signs of respect is listening. So how much do your children observe you listening to their mother? Which is a sign of respect. Do they frequently observe you doing that? Do they hardly ever, or sometimes? And so we're having the men kind of score themselves on that. So how much do they see you listening? How much do they see you thanking the mother for things that she does? How much do they see you supporting discipline, or any kind of limits that are being set on the kids, as opposed to undermining? Mm-hmm. It's time to go to bed, for instance. How much do they see you expressing interest in their mother? So in other words, interest in her opinions, interested in her interests, how much do you adopt some of her interests? Because kind of respect, that a lot of people don't think of, but kids are observing it all the time, and then finally, how much they see you asking her questions too, which is a sign of respect. It signifies that you value her opinion, for instance. So how much? So little, seemingly kind of invisible things kids are picking up on, and that's where they're learning respect through direct modeling from their children, from their parents. And so, interestingly, when you frame it that way, when you sort of frame it in terms of how much are you teaching your children this thing that you think is an important value, life value. Then it actually becomes very distressing to them to think that they're failing their children, that they're not teaching.
Really, that bothers them.
Yeah, that because they believe in it, and in a fundamental way, they're really letting their kids down. They're not teaching them a really important life skill, too. So then it's the same thing with empathy. So with empathy, the signs of empathy are noticing your partner. Is she tired? Is she anxious? Is she worried about something? How much do you show understanding, towards your partner? How much do you remember things that are important to her? Her mother's sick, do you ask about her mother, for instance? How much do you kind of offer what's needed, You know, and so we break it down in a very similar way, very concrete, you know, behaviors. And again,